Hey friends, it's Laura with Laura's Handmade Haven. Welcome or welcome back. I'm so glad you joined me today. We're continuing our video series for the Sweetland Quilt Sew-Along. It's designed by Lori Holt, fabrics are by Riley Blake. This video, we are going to tackle that pieced blocks. There are 5 of these piece blocks in the quilt. All of them have different fabrics, same design, but we have a little bit of applique to do and a little bit of piecing to do, and we'll have a great big block. So first thing I want to tell you is that for the middle of these blocks, you will need a star, just like we made for our cornerstone. So there's nothing new there. If you need help on the applique for the corners, for the star block, for the star center of this piece block, refer back to the sashing and cornerstones video. I walked through all of it. It is not difficult. You can handle it. I know you can. The only thing we're going to be doing today in this video is we're going to be squaring this up down to the size that we need it for our block. So join me at the cutting mat. Now I have a 4.5 inch square here, and what I have done is I've just put the 2 1/4 inch mark in the middle of my star in the top and the bottom, and that should line my star up perfectly in this square. Now the other thing that I like to check is this little straight line that goes across for these 2 points of our star. If it happened that I had something on there a little wonky and my line was like this, I would use the top of those 2 points to even it out, because visually, when you look at your quilt, you're going to notice a line that is uneven faster than you're going to notice these other 3 points that may not be quite square inside your block. So that is my advice to you. And then the other thing is you want to see if you have the same type of allowance on all 4 sides of your square, and kind of adjust your ruler to allow for that. So it looks like I should move this up just a smidge. And that way I have close to 3/4 of an inch at the top and bottom, and pretty close to the same amount on the sides. So this is where I'm going to lay it out, even though that when you look at the larger square, this isn't perfectly square with the outside edges, but it is perfectly square with my star, and that is what matters. I've had people ask me what kind of rotary cutter I have, and so I'm just going to tell you I have a Quilter Select rotary cutter. I do love it. It's weighted. It does take a little bit to get used to, just because there's no easy way to close it. And thanks to a viewer, I know that I can just push this button and tap it on my mat, and it will close to the correct position. All right, so this is the star for the middle of our block, and let's go lay out the rest of the pieces and get sewing. If you watched my fabric cutting video, you know that I put all of these pieces in one big Ziploc bag, and they're ready for me when I get to that block. So basically, I just dumped all the pieces out. I put them on a design board in alphabetical order, and then I have my little star block down here just waiting for me to get to it. So there are several things to do for this block. If you look at the pattern in the sew-along guide, this is basically all you get. There's no written directions for it. Now, I know that Lori will have written directions on her blog, and you definitely should read through those if you want to see her techniques and see how it varies from what I'm going to show you today. Now, I will say that I probably have a lot of similarities just because I've done a lot of her quilt-alongs and I'm used to her style of sewing. So when I look at these pieces, I kind of know how she's going to approach each thing. So what we're going to do first is we're going to basically break this block down and think about what we need to construct. So when I look at this, I know just from working with some of her other patterns that these corner blocks right here are 4 patches. And then we have easy corner triangles for these outside wings. You're not actually making these half square triangles to begin with. You'll put those on after your 4 patches completed. So we have 4 patches, and then we also have 2 of these little pieces in here that just have the angles with the easy corner triangles. Again, we have 4 flying geese on these outer points here. And then these are also the pieces that just have easy corner triangles. We just have to make sure we keep our angles in mind. And then we have this big C piece that at first you're like, oh no, how do I do that? But again, it's just an easy corner triangle. So We're going to break this down and do it one step at a time, and we will get through it together. So the first thing we're going to do is do our 4 patches, and I'll show you how to lay those out on your sewing table so you can get through those really quickly, and then we'll move on to the other pieces in the block. All right, so it looks like for our 4 patches, we need an A, 2 H's, and a K. So we're just going to go ahead and put these on our extension table over here, and we're going to lay them out in the order that we need to have them in the block. So I have taken my A's and I'm going to divide my H's, and then I'm going to grab 4 of the K's. And that's all we need for right now. Now we do have a directional fabric in this block, and this is what I've kind of started doing. I want all of my directional fabric to be the same way in all 4 corners. So in order to do that, you basically take 2 of them and you turn them the other direction, and you lay them back, and this is the order you're going to sew them in, and you're going to leave them in this order to run them through your machine. When I do 4 patches, I like to lay the blocks out like this, because then I will also build my 4 patches as they're going through the machine. Just make sure with that directional fabric that you keep it in the same direction as you have laid out when you are putting them together. Don't turn it on yourself. I've done that before. All right, so for right now, I'm just going to leave those the way they are because I don't want to have to cut my threads. And so I'm going to move on to starting the flying geese, which those are with piece B and K. K is kind of our background, our main background for this block. So we have a lot of K's. Now for all of these corner angles like this, I am using just the washi tape that I've put on my extension table. It's serving the purpose as a seam guide tape, and so I don't need to mark anything. I don't have to fold my little squares into triangles, and I don't have to do any pencil marks because I can just follow this guide and keep sewing. I do like trying to find ways to just, keep sewing and not having to do other little pieces along the way. Now, so I don't forget about these 4 patches, I'm going to go ahead and cut them off into segments of 2 because they were sewn together, so I can just sew them together. So now when I open these up, they will already be in the correct layout for my 4 patch, and I just need to put them together. And I like to finger press my seam in the middle to where it goes to the darker fabric and away from that white background. So when I nest the seam, I will just take this and push that seam to the darker side, and that way it will nest and it's away from that white. Here are my flying geese. I'm just going to trim them and press them. And okay, so if you want, you can stack them up and trim them all at once, just like this, or you can do them one at a time. It is your choice. Now that these are pressed, I can put the other little wing on my flying goose. And then they're just going to hang out there for a while, because we have a lot of other pieces to put angles onto. So we're just going to work our way through the block, doing as much as we can just to prep. All right, so when I look at the block, I'm going to go ahead and grab D because, well, that's the next letter in the alphabet that I can use. And it also gets that same background. And all of these go the same way, even though it may not look like it, but they do. As it moves around the block, they're all angled the same way, which is kind of nice. As long as you get the first one right, you should be able to follow that one's lead. If you have problems with angles, and I definitely do sometimes, you can just draw the pencil line on your square and put it on the block and see which way it should go. And that way you'll have a visual reference that you are correct. Next, we're going to do the E pieces. And again, they get these little background squares as well. Now this one goes the opposite of D. And again, if you get the first one right, then you should be okay to follow that same position, that same angle through your machine. All right, so that's D and E. So let's move on to piece F. Now F and E are in the center of our block. Those do have a different background. So just take note of that. This is the second block that I've done actually. And the first block I had that wrong. All right, so this is F. And again, if we get the first angle right, then we can follow that path and have all of our angles right. This is why I like keeping all of my letters together, especially when working with angles, because that way, you know, if you get one right, you get them all right. If you get one wrong, you get them all wrong. And that is one thing I would suggest. Make sure you check it before you cut it. The first block I had the wrong background on, and I was glad that I had paid attention and caught it, because then I was able just to take those off and fix it. All right. All of this is just all prep, basically. I mean, we're definitely piecing the block together, but you can't really see much of it, right? Like, it doesn't look like anything's happening. I like it when things start happening, but all of this will pay off pretty quickly. Okay, so we have all kinds of things that we can press. We're going to start by just trimming and pressing our flying geese and putting them off to the side for now. We're also going to press open our 4 patches and get those easy corner triangles on. All right, so now we have all of our 4 patches. They're pressed open. And we just need to put the easy corner triangles on them. And basically, when you look at this block, this is the center no matter what corner you're on the block. And so we're going to be putting the easy corner triangles on the 2 darker blue color blocks. So I'm just going to do one side at a time, and then we will do the other side. It doesn't really matter if you do the same side first, because these don't overlap or anything. I just like, I don't know, that's how I like doing it. Now we're going to leave these attached to the machine for right now, and we're going to go ahead and cut off all of the other angled pieces that we've made. Some of them get sewn together, some of them will get sewn onto the 4 patches. All right, so here's where we want to make sure we check before we cut, okay? So what I like to do is I just lay these out on a design board or on my extension table like I am right here, and I lay them into the design that they will be in the block. And you can go by your stitching line to see if that is correct or not. And if it's not, then we need to stop and seam rip and redo. But these are both correct, so we're going to go ahead and cut those off. And same thing with these. These are underneath the flying goose that we made. Now, honestly, it doesn't really matter. As long as they go opposite directions, you could swap these around. Like it could be that way instead of this way, and it would be fine. But you need to lay them out and make sure you have these angles going opposite directions so you get that cute little V in there. And I will have a little bit of pressing to do before I can move on. So let me show you another trick when you're pressing that's going to help you when you're sewing. When it comes to this little V section, if you think through how you're going to be sewing them together and you press to prepare for that, then it's going to help you a lot. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to press one of these with the seam allowance going towards the background, and you're going to press the other one with the seam allowance going towards the main focus fabric. And the reason that is because that way when you put them together, these seams will nest, and it'll be a really good point for you to be able to line that stuff up. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to press one to the background and one to the focus fabric. Doesn't really matter which one you do which way, as long as they're opposites. So this one I pressed with the seam allowance going to the background fabric. And if you flip these around, it will be easy to press out. And those are pressed going to the focus fabric. All right, so the gold pieces are just going to go hang out on the design board because we don't need them quite yet. And then these blue pieces are going to get sewn together. They go together like this. And because of the way we just pressed this is going to be super easy because that little seam is going to nest and lock into place. And we don't have to worry about them shifting, and we know that little point is going to be perfect. Yes, I'm aware I don't have the other easy corner triangle on my 4 patches, but that's because I didn't want to have to cut my thread. So I'm just going kind of back and forth. Just building the pieces for this block is all we're doing at this point. We're going to put the other stitch and flip corner onto our 4 patches. All right, so at this point I am going to cut everything off the machine, just because that way I can trim and press all 8 of these pieces and then start building out bigger elements in our block. And again, it's up to you. You can definitely trim these one at a time. I like getting it done pretty quickly, so I usually trim them all. But you do have to make sure that everything's lined up correctly. You don't want to cut any seam allowances too small or too large, or large isn't too big of a deal, but you definitely don't want to cut them too small. Okay, so if you look at the corner of this block, you'll notice that this basically surrounds this block. And that's what it's going to look like before we do the next stitch and flip corner. So we're just going to run these through the machine. Now you're going to notice that I actually finger press the seam back differently on this gold piece. And that's just so I can line it up and nest those seams just like we did on the 2 pieces that go underneath the flying geese. I should have. So do this if you're doing yours. When you're doing these, press the smaller, so I think it's E, the smaller of the pieces, press that with your seam allowance going towards the focus fabric, not the background fabric, and that will help you out. Okay, so we're going to leave those hanging on the machine because I don't want to cut my thread. And we're going to sew the flying geese onto the, I don't know, the piece that goes underneath it. Now, if you want places to line this up on this block, You can definitely make sure that your point is lined up on that seam here. If you have sewn and cut accurately, they should line up perfectly. That is one thing I have to say about most of Lori's patterns and Riley Blake's sew-along guides, that if you cut accurately and sew accurately with that 1/4 inch seam, for the most part, things just line up. It's like magical. Okay, we're going to leave those 4 on the machine. We're not going to worry about taking these to the pressing mat. We're just going to finger press them back. The gold is solid in the center here, so that's how you know. You want to start with all of your gold stuff here. And then this will line up. And again, on your golds, both of them, just press them so your seam allowance is towards the gold, not the background. If I would have done that, it would have been so much easier for me to just have my seams nesting, but this isn't going to be too bad. And I am finger pressing the seam between the gold and the main 4-patch block that we started with to have the seam allowance on pressed towards the gold side. Sorry about that. I kind of stumbled through that. I was thinking at the same time I was trying to speak, and sometimes that doesn't work. All right, everybody gets cut off the machine because we need to press out these corner squares that are for our block, and then we'll put the last stitch and flip corner on those, and then we'll be able to assemble our block. Okay, last piece before block assembly is this last stitch and flip corner. And basically all you do is just take the square, put it into the lower corner where that gorgeous gold is, and stitch across the corner. And again, since I have that washi tape on my machine, I don't have to mark or fold or press anything here. I can just use that line to go from corner to corner. And this is like a 4.5 inch block, I think, is what these red ones are. So pretty big, you know, that you can do that with. And honestly, I could probably even go to 5.5 inches without any issues. I have done larger ones too, but sometimes they get a little tricky if it's much bigger than that. But 5 inch square works pretty good. All right, so these need trimmed off and pressed, and then we can do block assembly. Okay, so some of you at this point will want to save this red fabric and cut a little square out of it, and feel free to do that. I am not going to do it. Okay, so now we have all of the pieces for our block, and this design board is actually not big enough, but it'll be okay. So we just lay out our block pieces. Now, remember, we did have one directional fabric, and I am going to pay attention to that and make sure that all of those are going the same way, because we took some time and put in some effort to make sure they were all headed the same direction when we sewed the 4 patches together. So I want to make sure that I don't waste that effort. And so now all of them are in the same direction. And now we basically have a 9-patch block to assemble. All of those little pieces came together, and now we're just left with a 9-patch. All right, so if you saw my 9-patch quilt tutorial, then you know how I do 9 patches, and I'm just going to tell you I do this the exact same way. So I took the top row, first 2 pieces, my center piece for the block is on top. And then I'm going to take my second row, and again, the middle piece will be on top. And same thing for our third row. And I will tell you that sometimes if it doesn't quite line up or whatever, I'll get it started and then I will stretch it and make it work. All right, so now I cut those off, slide them back down, and here are the first two pieces for row 1. So I simply add the third. Now I'm going to sew rows 1 and 2 together. It could be rows 2 and 3, I don't know. I'm going to sew 2 of the rows together. And we're just going to nest our seams here. Now pay attention. Remember, I did a finger press change on those gold pieces. So if you've done that as well, just make sure all of your seams are heading in the right direction. They don't get twisted. You don't want that twisted in there because then your block's not going to lay flat and your quilt's not going to be as flat as it could be and you'll be sad, and that's no good. Okay, so what I've done is I put my fingers really close to this seam right here, and I just have the seams going opposite directions to nest that seam. And we'll do the same thing for the other side of that center block. Being mindful of all of our seams that we've already put into the block, just making sure they're going the same way as we want them to. Now we're going to flip this one over, do the same thing, and then we'll press it and reveal. All right, there we have it. This is actually the second block of these that I've made. So I have block 1 and 2 of the piece blocks done. I still have 3 more to go. To be quite honest with you, the way I'm going to tackle the other 3 of these blocks, I'm going to go ahead and do those center stars first on all 3 of them and slip them back in the bags. And that way my applique part of that block is going to be done and out of the way. So that might be one trick that you might want to incorporate into your quilt making as well. And then the only other thing is, just take your time. Just watch your angles, make sure everything's lined up the way you want it to be, press your seams. As we discussed on this, on D and E here, you want to press both of those so the seam allowances go to the gold. That way when you're putting them together with that 4 patch, with the stitch and flip corners in the corner, those seams will nest really easily for you. And then with the 2 pieces here, press one with the seam allowance to the background and press the other one with the seam allowance to the foreground, and that way those seams will nest for you easily too. So a couple little tricks for you there just to incorporate into your pressing routine so your sewing routine is easier. And those types of tricks are always welcome in my world, so hopefully you appreciate those too. This quilt is coming together really quickly and it's gorgeous. I love this quilt so much. I cannot wait to get it done. Next video, next week, there's actually going to be 2 videos next week because we're going to be tackling that pieced border. I have one video that I'm going to show you how to get through those flying geese really quickly. We're going to do hyperspeed geese. So I'll have that video for you, and then we'll also have a video on putting together that pieced border, and I have some tricks on that one too. So be sure that you stay tuned and watch those. If you missed the one on the applique, the sashing and cornerstones, go back and check out all those. The applique video series was actually 3 videos. I broke it down because that's a really big block, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into those applique blocks. So for the applique blocks, I actually broke it down into the prep and sewing the simple shapes, and then the next one is glue basting, and the last one is actually doing your machine applique and finishing up your block. So these are not trimmed down, so things aren't lining up quite perfectly here, but they are ready to be trimmed down when I get to it. So I hope you enjoyed this part of the Sweet-Long Sew-Along. I hope you picked up some tips and tricks. Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you're thinking. How are you doing with your quilt? Are you sewing along? Are you just watching? Are you picking up some tricks for other quilts you're working on? I'd love to hear what you're working on and what you're doing. If you have any other tricks to share with everyone, please put those in the comments down below too. I would love to hear from you. So until next time, find joy in all you do. Carve out some time for crafting and creating. And remember, it's always better when you make stuff up.